And that's the reason why you can't conflate brotherhood as support.
Man, say that again, please.
You cannot, they don't equal the same thing. Because not every brother is committed to the battle. Some are committed to the comfort. And he was committed to the comfort. He wanted both and, right? And he wanted to make sure that I joined in.
And thought he was doing you a favor.
Yes.
By keeping you in line with the goal, but I'm going to give you a little bit of medicine.
I mean, come on. And I think about it and I'm like, it's wild to think about this topic of isolation and to think about that it happened around a community of guys.
But the wrong one.
But the wrong ones. And when we all partook in the materials, we did it in isolation. So it was a false brotherhood as far as one that was meant to take me further. It was actually these were my cellmates.
Wow.
So we have to recognize the difference between those who are in the foxhole with us and those who are in the cell with us. Even before I ever got married, I mean, it was just a chronic cycle.
Right.
When I got bound, I was 18 years old and I was completely oblivious to this world of the difference between being able to romance or knowing how to romance a woman versus seducing her. And so I learned the art of seduction from my father. I learned more about my dad after his death from my mom than I did while he was living. We had our moments, we had our times, but it was that generational demon, as it were, that was pursuing after it, and I had no idea. I walk in and I already know what it is I'm gonna see, but I'm just trying to focus on where it is that I need to be, right? My card, entry, come in, I know the locker room, I need to head to the locker room so I can change. So I'm doing everything that I can to stay just on my path.
My man locked in, look, fighting for his life. Look,
fighting for my life.
Looking straight.
And then
I was looking at some statistics, and these are pretty eye-opening. There's one study that says in the United States, a survey found
where he starts to help him to reclaim his value. He establishes him as baby boy. That means everything to a man.
Son.
Like, to know that I'm a beloved son, like that I'm not just a son. I'm not just something that you procreated, came up with. I am your beloved son. Think about your favorite eat spot. That every time that you go, you either get something new because you know everything on their menu slap, or you always get the same thing over and over and over and over because it can never get old to you. That's what the Word of God became to me. It was that taste and see.
Pop out in it all black, pull up looking like the Chalo.
So yo, what's good, Jeremy?
Loaded question.
Right. No, man. Bro, I appreciate you taking some time out to sit down with me. Just taking a moment to remind the fam out there, you know, if this is your first time watching Perspective or your 20th time, Perspective is this place where we help reframe your perspective to give you the tools to transform the world around you. And so today I got a really amazing treat for you. You know, we've been knowing each other for a good minute.
Yeah.
A good minute now.
Yeah.
And so it's only fitting, man, just to give you a moment and a space to really lay out a little bit of your journey and some things that you have been working on lately. For those who you don't know, right, Jeremy Gaston, husband, father, brother, son, tech innovator. You're talking to a person who is very entrepreneurial. You're talking to a person who is a very much prophetic voice. Talk about a man's man, right? Visionary. We can go on and on and on, but without further ado, and remind some and introduce to others, Jeremy Gaston. What's good, bro?
What's good, man?
Good to see you, man.
Wow.
Good to see you.
I'm gonna need a copy of that introduction. Was wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm honored.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I'm honored, honestly, that you would take some time to hang out. But, man, kind of just jumping straight into it. So, I mean, even how I met you, you know, a good friend of mine, I would dare say, is one of my best friends, knowing to be one of your mentees for decades now. And he introduced us some years ago. And when you let me know that you were, thinking about creating some things as of late, right? And one of the things I didn't mention earlier is, husband, father, and now author, right? Take us through what was the backdrop and the thought process of writing this book.
So, for fact checking, this is my third book.
Oh yeah.
However, this is the one that has mattered the most to me. Holds the deepest place for me. My initial writing foray was, I have a music background, as being a lyricist, and I won't say former lyricist because you never know. But just writing the music was a totally different cadence. Yeah. But I remember when I got married, I got some really great feedback from our marriage mentors, who said, "Hey, for the sake of your wife, I suggest that you sit down for a year and sit down for ministry." We were performing, ministering at different places. Got a chance to minister at the at Globe Life Park. Wow. And that was a highlight of the ministry moment. And then I sat down, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened for my marriage. And in that time, the cadence of how it is that I minister started to shift. And this is what I like to tell young artists who are in the ministry in that method, in that mode rather. And I just let them know that this is not your identity. This is just a method. This is how it is that you're delivering it now.
One expression.
Yeah, one expression. Exactly. And so getting to this place now where I finally found my voice. The first two books were really exploration. First one is called 10 Things God Desires for You. The second one is The Next 7 Days, and it's an entrepreneurial book where I lay out a 7-day plan for how it is that you can launch a business as a faith-based entrepreneur and really just take the monkey off your back of fear and I can't do this or I don't know what to do. So it's just that guide like that. But with now coming to, this ends with me, this is personal. This is weaponry.
Let's go.
And so that was the value of bringing this one to life. Was after some personal experiences, I knew that I couldn't leave this to myself.
So what this ends with me, and I've had a chance, and thankfully, thank you, I've had a chance to read it cover to cover, and when I say powerful, I really believe that this book is timely, it's needed. There are keys in this book that are going to unlock men and generations of freedom, for sure. So talk to me a bit about, when it comes to the idea of manhood, right, and society's kind of standard and things we're exposed to early, not limited to technology and dating and the conversations of the birds and the bees, right, and the generational family dynamics that are somewhat dysfunctional, but they become normalized because there are things we've all agreed to not talk about, but we're all dealing with, right? So talk to me about where the journey of manhood, kind of the backdrop, even in your young adulthood, early examples of being a man. What did that look like for you?
My earliest experience with not just what it meant to be a man, but my last name is really is an anchor in my family, on my dad's side of the family. It means something to be Gaston. And so my dad, he was, you honored me by calling me a man's man, but like my dad, he wasn't just a man's man. He was the personality that everybody wanted to be around.
Wow.
He was a salesman. He was a car salesman, and he embodied it like 1,000%. There was nothing that he couldn't do. First of all, as like he had an engineering mind, there was just nothing that he couldn't do. But the way that he approached life was that he knew that he had the ability to talk himself in and out of situations. And I saw that. I remember seeing that more and more as I got into my teenage years, as I got into, got into college, and he and I, we would have our times where we would go out to eat and sit. Him and my mother, they divorced when I was 6 years old, but I was always a beloved son. He always, just our relationship. I love the time that he took, but it also kind of shielded me from being able to see as you mentioned, those generational issues that were lurking and looming and pursuing after me.
And what were some of those generations?
It was again, like being a smooth talker. I don't think we talk enough about the difference between being able to romance or knowing how to romance a woman versus seducing her. And so I learned the art of seduction from my father. I saw my brother utilize it. Even my sister had the capability of being able to just captivate men. And I realized, like, in the memory of my father, there was never a time that my father wasn't without a female companion. Whether it was, when he was married to my mom, then he remarried after that, and then, a string of other women that he was in relationship with. And so seeing that, knowing his prowess, not even really knowing from an intimacy standpoint, but you just kind of go there, right? And so I remember, for me, I had a pursuit to keep myself pure until I got married. Simultaneously, in a large part, God really showed me, like, hey, this chronic dating is just practicing for divorce. And so I held on as long as I could to not be in a relationship if I wasn't ready to be married. And then by the time that I hit 19, was in college, moved to Dallas, and had opportunities. I was a bartender. Bartended throughout my 20s, and that was just wide open opportunity, and it was there that I really saw the opportunity just latch on, because now I'm bombarded, but completely unawares that there was even a battle that I needed to fight.
Man, and when you said battle that needed to fight, it made me think of this. Many men and women, but specifically men who might be hearing this right now or even watching this, there's a battle that they're in the middle of right now. Maybe they've shared that battle with someone. Maybe they haven't spoken about it. But talk to me about, specifically when it comes to this book, and It Ends With Me, the importance that men not become crippled or succumb to the silent battles, right? Talk to me about the importance of overcoming that.
Vulnerability. That's how I'm going to start with that. The lack of vulnerability. And I'm reminded of the imagery of medieval kings. When they would come from war, they would take knights, dukes, earls. They would take those of high regard, those who actually fought in the battles with them. They would take them and they would go into a cave where there were hot springs, and this was a spa. So they would go in and they would unsheath and they would take off all of their armor and they would expose their wounds. So now they're in a place of vulnerability, ultimate vulnerability. The king himself is in a place of ultimate vulnerability where only those who are willing to sacrifice and put their life on the line are able to see his vulnerabilities. And it was in that I began to realize that I didn't have a culture of vulnerability for myself, because I didn't have a culture of brotherhood, of people who were in the foxhole with me, who were out there, who were battling alongside of me. And because of that, I languished in this environment of isolation, which just kept me in the cycle. It just kept me in the cycle of falling, because the shame would tell me I wasn't good enough already, because I had already fallen sometime before. And so what's the use of even trying not to? And then once I succumbed to it, then it showed back up and it said, see, I told you. now you might as well just keep going. And it was just trying to pull me in deeper, deeper, and deeper until I realized I have to open my mouth.
Right.
If I don't open my mouth, I die alone.
Wow, bro. And I know sometimes on whether it's platforms like social media, YouTube, Instagram, sometimes folks will use the word corn to kind of mimic the actual word of the struggles of addiction, what we call corn addiction, if you will, on platforms. And so we'll kind of use that same terminology.
Sure.
But dealing with specifics of addictions and things like corn addiction and other addictions in this book, I like how you unpack in chapter 4, you just hit on it about isolation and sometimes the lies that we believe of isolation. Talk to me about a time for you when you realized, you had to break free of isolation.
Yeah, it was, even before I ever got married, this was a ever rotate. I mean, it was just a chronic cycle.
Right.
When I got bound, I was 18 years old and I was completely oblivious to this world of, and when I say oblivious, like, let me help you understand that I believe I was in a bubble. I'm just going to call it. I believe I was in a bubble.
Shelter.
Because there were very, very much so, but divinely so. Because I had moments prior to that. I had seen the magazine clippings. I'd come across it. I'd been around my brother and his friends, and they had it on the television. And I had been in situations that I so easily could have succumbed to it, but it didn't catch hold of me. So that's the reason why I say I was divinely sheltered, because it being unawares of what this was, like the poison that it was to get it into my veins. It wasn't until I had a classmate who comes barreling through, and I frame this in the book, but I wish you guys could see this. This massive black dude, dreads, just comes in, and he's got a stack. Literally, his chin is on the top of him, and he's holding a stack like this
of magazines.
Wow! And he comes through, and he sets him down, slams him on the coffee table, and we're all looking. Now, my other roommates, they're very aware. They were already engaging in it.
They said, we know what time it is.
They knew what time it was. I had no idea. And so I'm like, what in the world? Like, I see what the content is on the top, and I'm like, what in the world? Why do you have all these mags? He's like, dude, you said that you were saving yourself for marriage. This is the next best thing. And chunks it to me.
Wow. Wow. So at that point, he knew that you were saving yourself from marriage.
100%.
However, he was not an individual equipped to keep you on the path of saving yourself from marriage. And it made me think about this. Individuals who become aware of our next, or where we're going, or the desires we have, but they don't hold the keys necessary to help us get there, they oftentimes will derail us, distract us, and bring us a step away, from where we want to go. So it's interesting to me, he knew enough from your lifestyle and how you live that you were keeping yourself, but he knew enough also to introduce and interrupt that momentum. That's crazy.
Yes. And that's the reason why you can't conflate brotherhood as support.
Man, say that again, please.
You cannot, they don't equal the same thing, because not every brother is committed to the battle. Some are committed to the comfort. And he was committed to the comfort. He wanted both and, and he wanted to make sure that I joined in, because even though, which is wild to think about,
and thought he was doing you a favor, by keeping you in line with the goal. But I'm going to give you a little bit of medicine.
I mean, come on. And I think about it, and I'm like, it's wild to think about this topic of isolation, and to think about that it happened around a community of guys.
But the wrong one.
But the wrong ones. And when we all partook in the materials, we did it in isolation. So it was a false brotherhood as far as one that was meant to take me further. It was actually these were my cellmates.
Wow.
So we have to recognize the difference between those who are in the foxhole with us and those who are in the cell with us.
That is profound. You have to truly be aware of those who are in the foxhole with you in battle versus the ones who are cellmates with you.
Yeah.
Wow. Man, before our conversation today, I was looking at some statistics, and these are pretty eye-opening. There's one study that says in the United States, a survey found that the most active corn users ages 18 to 34 years old. So the most active are 18 to 34, right? Young adulthood. Yeah. It also showed that 57% of young adults actively seek out frequently or proactively seek out frequently, either monthly or more often, in comparison to only 29% of adults older than 25. However, one key note was a lot of these are self-reported. Yeah. How many guys do you know?
Oh my gosh.
That would self-report that not only are they looking at corn, but they're actually addicted or bound, right? So if it's self-reported, how many more than 57%? And I think it even said another study found that in a given year, 69% of men reported having viewed porn versus 40% of women. And so if nearly 70% of men are actively looking at this monthly, let's say, right, how many more would there be, right? And so this suffering in silence, I think, has got to be where we start to normalize the struggle of it, normalize the ugly sides of it, remove the cultural beautification of it, because you have scientists that come out and say, getting released X amount of times a day or week is healthy and it's actually going to help your neurological system. There's lots of studies that show it's actually debilitating, right?
Very much
it
so.
takes your strength. You become more lethargic. Why do professional athletes not engage in sex before, whether it's the Olympics or a boxing match? Exactly. And there's this whole culture now of they call it retention culture. Yeah. Like men are now taking a stance of like living more pure, just by way of kind of cultural assimilation, even, right? In the book, there's a moment I read where you said, you went into the gym and something shifted for you in your perspective. Talk to me about what was going on in that moment when you entered the gym.
Yeah, the appetite that I had was no longer there.
How had you viewed them up until that point? Take us a little bit right before that, up into that moment.
Yeah, so before then, they were objects of my pleasure. It was, it didn't matter. You walking on the street, you were doing your job. I explained this to my wife. The ugliness of it is that it's not that she wasn't enough.
Right.
It was that the desire was insatiable. So she could be enough for me as a man and as a husband, but this desire that I had, that it was ravenous, it was never complete. And so it was just an opportunity to, if I was out in public or if I was watching a game, it was an opportunity to consume more. They were fodder for my pleasure, for my own personal pleasure. It just stoked the fire of my own personal pleasure, and fighting against that belief and that understanding. Job said, I make a covenant with my eyes, never to look upon a woman lustfully. I had no way of being able to hold on to that covenant. I said that covenant so many times. But up until the appetite changed, this is what they were. That's what a woman was for me. And I had to fight against it. Because it was in here. It was just mental. That's what it was.
And what was happening in the moment of the change? And we'll get to the moment that the change was reflected and you realized it. but what key things were happening in yourself personally to get on the other side of that?
The biggest transformation is, I'll reference this scripture that is so commonly used. Romans 12:1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, and be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. It is a very understated passage because it's only with the renewal, with the restoration of your mind. I literally had to get a new mind because the one that I had was broken. It was corrupt. It was bent to see distorted. And so it took a new, and I'm going to use the plug, it took a new perspective in order for me to be able to go in and see them through the right eyes, through the right lens, instead of through the lens of generations.
So what I hear is that scripture finally took root.
Yes.
And you actually applied it. It sounds like the word of God became your weapon and your tool you reached for in your toolbox to finally change the way you viewed. Take us to that moment in the gym. What was happening?
Yeah. When I walked in the gym, my wife is beside me, and usually she would position herself behind me because she wanted to see if
what you was seeing.
Exactly. And she told me this straight up. Like a lot of times I walk behind you because I want to see, are you controlling yourself? Because she had been damaged by this, so many times. And for the first time I walk in and I already know what it is I'm gonna see, but I'm just trying to focus on the quadrants of where it is that I need to be, right? My card, entry, come in. I know the locker room. I need to head to the locker room so I can change. So I'm doing everything that I can to stay just on my path, just be regular,
My man locked in, fighting for his life.
Fighting for my life.
Looking straight.
And then a young lady crossed my path. And she was in athleisure, gear. Lululemon,
tights.
The usual. Yes, yes. And when I tell you, my heart broke. You're a father of a daughter.
Yep.
You will know when she gets older, there's an experience that you have where you recognize, you get these glimpses of her as a woman. And you know that you have to guard and you have to protect that at any cost. You recognize that as a father. You just automatically, she is valuable. She is literally a walking inheritance, right? She doesn't get a chance to keep my last name. So I am going to gift this inheritance to another man. And I have to protect that. And when I saw that woman, the way that she was dressed, my heart broke because all I saw was the little girl.
Wow.
When I tell you, I was shook. I can't express to you enough. And it was the best word I can use, modicum of emotions. Because as I saw the little girl, and my heart broke because I saw the little girl who was wanting to be validated and seen. Simultaneously, I felt this joy and elation because I was no longer confined to the mentality that was a taker, that was a consumer, as though she had something that she owed me, that she needed to show me her body, that she needed to present herself to me. No longer did I feel like she owed me anything. No longer did I feel like this was an opportunity for me. It actually made me want to turn to my wife and tell her, can you go talk to her? Right? Because I saw the breakdown. I saw what was going on. I saw but behind what was actually happening that I could never see. And I realized at that point, on that day, I realized I wasn't able truly to fend for God in the earth to help reclaim and restore people when they were objects for my consumption.
Man, Wow. And I could attest to some of this as well. You know, being one who is married, my wife knows, even in my singleness. And I tell bros all the time, whether they're single or they're engaged or they've been married for a long time, how we have kind of, I call it coded or programmed,
right.
how we've kind of coded our habits prior to marriage. They don't go anywhere. Yeah. And so if you've already been accustomed to, you know, second and third and fourth looks and talking to a young lady because she's cute and, hey, you saw something walking by you, you turned around, you went and talked, like,
right.
Even once you are married, what happens is if you haven't done the work and done the hard work of really, you know, dealing with that, right, with the word, in community, with brothers, with accountability, those innate responses and triggers are still there, right? They're still there. They don't go anywhere. And so it's interesting. Like for me, I've been able to even become somewhat, I won't say humorous, but when you become very free, you can become free. Very like much. Me and my wife were in North Park one time in the line and at a food place, and these two young ladies walked by in their tights or whatever. Two young ladies, and I'm like, baby, look, we don't need to see all that. Don't nobody want to see your pieces and creases.
Right.
Like, and she's like, I know. She's like, but I think she's been doing squats too. Like, she's, you know, it became humorous to the point where like that was not something I had to be quiet about or let me look away or let me like, why? Because I was no longer bound to the thing that once distracted me. My eyes work, but it no longer became something that I felt like I had to hide or cover in the sake of it was feeding the sin nature and the lust of the eye in me. It no longer was. In fact, it did the opposite. I felt kind of like you. I felt like, I won't say I felt bad, but I felt like, wow, like really? Like, what are we? And so, of course, common culture, some ladies might hear this and like, well, I go to the grocery store, I wear my ties, I don't feel no type of way, I'm secure in who I am, I don't have insecurity, I'm not trying to please anyone. We understand cultural norms are cultural norms, but there's a certain type of discretion and a certain type of way that you carry yourself when you've gone through a personal transformation, right? And you've gone through a new way of living. And how you demonstrate who you are without saying a word, right?
So
I
absolutely.
think that's super important. When did you realize you had the ability to kind of influence some of the realities that you had to experience when it comes to a temptation moment or when it comes to a moment of vulnerability? When did you start to realize you had the upper hand now?
It was right around that time. You know, that was actually the first time that outwardly I did influence my experience, my emotions, and I saw it in action. But I realized that as I was spending time sitting in the Word, and when I tell you I was sitting in the Word, I was stuck. I was stuck. I had never, in all of my years of being faithful to God, I had never truly just like fallen in love with the scriptures. And when I say fallen in love, I mean like think about your favorite eat spot. That every time that you go, you either get something new because you know everything on their menu slap, or you always get the same thing over and over and over and over because it can never get old to you. That's what the Word of God became to me. It was that taste and see that the Lord is good. I had never tasted those flavors before, and I had become so addicted to it. I realized God was not looking to destroy addiction in me. He was looking to shift addiction. He just wanted to replace what I was addicted to.
Bro, that reminds, because the scripture says, and I forget where specifically, but it says, he who hungers and thirsts
for
righteousness shall be filled. Notice he acknowledges one thing. In all of us, we're going to hunger, we're going to thirst.
100%.
But it just depends where we hunger and thirst, depending on how we are filled.
Yes.
And so the hunger and thirsting don't go nowhere.
Right.
But it's the hunger and thirsting for the righteousness that finally fulfills the thing you were hungering and thirsting for all along.
That's it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. In the book, I love how you talk about, right, the importance of becoming we call precision prayer. I think you mentioned. Touch on the precision prayer aspect, because you know you've taken us through this journey of, you know, in college you experienced what you experienced, in marriage you finally had a breakthrough of not being you know succumbing to attraction, distraction, all those things, and now you're on this other side and you're realizing that's not enough. You actually need access to something you call precision prayer and power. Talk about that a little bit.
So Jesus taught us about his divinity, and he taught us what his ultimate weapon is that he's given us, right? Jesus makes this statement. He says, all power has been given unto me in heaven and earth, right? And so now, because we operate and we live through him, we live and breathe and have our being, we have all authority in heaven and earth. Well, where have we seen him wield this authority? Have we seen it? Did we see it with this golden sword? Did we see it with a mighty javelin, or a massive hammer? It was always one thing. Same thing in the beginning that we saw when he was driven into the wilderness to be tempted. Words. God said, "Let there be light," and that's when we saw the power of God. Said that the earth was formless and void. He had created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void. So we're already like, okay, wow, he created the heavens and the earth. That's cool. Then we see his power when he speaks.
So where does that power relate to in the prayer aspect?
So this is the reason why I took you there. It's because Jesus then says, I've given you all authority. I've given you authority to bind and to loose. So he uses legal terminology. When he's teaching how to pray, he uses legal terminology. He has us to approach the Father, who is now no longer just creator. He's not God with the vowel removed, right? He is Father God. He is the mighty judge, the righteous judge. And the thing that we are requesting is his will on earth as it is in heaven, right? We are legislating not from heaven to earth, but from earth to heaven. Psalms says, the heavens, the high heavens are the Lord's, but the earth I've given to the sons of men. So this is precision prayer. When you come into alignment with God and you say, wait a minute, I realize that you've given me the earth as dominion. You've given me diminutive authority. That means that I don't have to beg. David said, I was young, now I'm old. I never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. God's seed doesn't beg because he has relationship. It means that he has authority and he has capability. So now when I go in before the Father and I recognize, God, my eyes have been drifting. God, my heart, the meditations of my heart, I find myself not just with the thoughts in my mind, but now this stuff has permeated my heart because I didn't catch it in time. I need you to go in and do an incision. So my prayers are all pointed. They're all pointed towards victory now. I'm not going to God, woe is me. I am a victor. You understand that my God wears, he wears a mantle that fills the temple. His robe fills the temple, which is a sign that there has never been a war that he's fought that he's not won.
So it sounds like a perspective shift, almost like as your kid would never not ask you something because they're not privy to the resources you have access to. All they know is the relationship I have and the proximity I have with daddy. If I ask him, there's a chance that he grants it. It may not be yes every time. Sometimes it might be not yet. But the fact that I have relationship, I know that I have access to anything potentially, to anything I might ask him. So that position is not will he, it's more so when he and if he decides to. I know he's able. I know my dad is capable based on my track record, based on my experiences. But that relationship, and that's exactly what it feels like you're kind of sharing a bit as far as that understanding from that place is how you express that authority from that victorious place.
I'll say this last piece on it. John, I believe 16, you have to fact check me on it. But Jesus says, you can if you ask the Father anything in my name, it's yours. I'll give it to you. And I marveled on this, but I also was so confused on like, how do I unlock this? Until I understood that Jesus went to heaven and he's not on vacation. He's not on vacation waiting to return for the second coming. He actually went from earth to heaven and got a job. And his job is very specific. He sits on the right hand of the Father, making intercessions daily for you, for me, and everyone viewing. So if his job is intercession and prayer, number one, that should tell you prayer is pretty daggone important. If he's praying in heaven, the only one praying in heaven, angels don't pray. Angels carry messages. He's the only one praying in heaven. Don't you think it's important to, in relationship to him, ask Jesus, what are you praying? When I got that revelation, I got that understanding, it changed the way I journal. It changes the way that I sit with God. Doesn't matter what I'm dealing with. God, we're low on this. We need a new this. We want this. Doesn't matter. I now go to the Father and I sit with Jesus and I say, Jesus, what are you praying about our vehicle? What are you praying about our circumstance? What are you praying about my family? What are you praying about me? And it's so much higher thinking that when I align myself with what he's praying over me, over my family, and I write that prayer down and I say that prayer, it's answered 100% of the time. Because God is not answering my prayer. He's answering Jesus' prayer.
That's why he said, pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Meaning the thing that you desire, ultimately I will pray your will. And when that aligns, boom, access granted. Let's talk about a little bit to the men real quick.
Sure.
For men who maybe not necessarily be in a place where they have the tools necessary to overcome. Your book tackles a lot of these issues from the parenting aspect and how to become proactive parents and have these conversations. You kind of delve through conversations and moments you've had with your children and things to start to speak and actually declare from a biblical space of place and authority. And you tackle a lot of things in the book. What would we say to the men that maybe they didn't see an example of a vulnerable man or a man that led by example, or a man that actually did what he said he was going to do? And so now they're battling something generationally, but they don't have the blueprint. They don't have the answer key. Now, what would we say to those men that are still stuck in that cycle? Because there is another side. But what do we say to those men that are there right now?
So first, there's not just hope. There is already victory that has been had in that area. My testimony is only one of many. The Word of God is that blueprint. It is that script.
In chapter 8 of the book, I like how you talked about this concept of band of brothers. And earlier you talked about it a bit, having brothers, but maybe in another setting, having the wrong brothers.
Right.
You talk about this retreat you went on some time ago and how it really opened your eyes. And so you mentioned this concept of having bands of brothers. And tell us what the book doesn't say about that experience and what you got from it.
Yeah, it's a retreat called Camp Freedom. And it was a 3-day intensive is probably the very mildest way that I can put it. So just imagine being able to pull away and to draw away when everything that you validated yourself by is work. So three days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we had times that we came together, but most of the time we spent our time apart from one another. We spent our time sitting with God, because when we came together, they ministered to our hearts. They spoke to the issue, right? And with that, with speaking to that, there were tools that they gave us, but the biggest thing that I got from that weekend was returning to my Father. I sat with God and for the first time let him speak to my heart. Men are romanced in a totally different way than women are. And we don't even use the term because it sounds a little weird, a little funny. But the way that God romances the heart of a man is the same way that a father romances the heart of his son. He lures him into a place where he starts to help him to reclaim his value. He establishes him as baby boy. That means everything to a man.
Son.
Like, to know that I'm a beloved son Like that I'm not just a son. I'm not just something that you procreated, came up with. I am your beloved son. You could be in front of a video game. Hey son, you want to go and toss a ball? Yes. Hey, you want to go fishing? All right, let's go. Right? It's that you matter so much to me. I just want you in my space. And I felt that for the very first time at Camp Freedom.
Man, so it sounds like sonship is something that you got from that environment. Even going into that experience, was your father still around when you went through that experience?
No, so my dad passed away when I was 21. Heart exploded. He had a history of drug usage, and that was, to really kind of tie that back in, there were those hidden addictions again that I was unaware of. I learned more about my dad after his death from my mom than I did while he was living. We had our moments, we had our times, but it was that generational demon, as it were, that was pursuing after, and I had no idea. So here I am, deep steeped into my own addiction, and then I find out how it is that what even led up to my mom and my dad's divorce.
This ends with me. Talk to us about ultimately where we're going to be able to find it. Where can anyone stay connected with you, follow you on social media?
Sure. The book releases May 2nd, and it's going to be available through Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Nobles, anywhere that you would get your digital books. Also, I'm working on the audiobook, recording the audiobook right now, so that men have that version as well. So as they're on the go, they can go through it. And I don't want any man to have any excuse, any reason not to have the weaponry at their fingertips.
Man, this has been a pretty incredible conversation, bro. I appreciate you stopping through. Perspective. Listen, if this episode encouraged you, if it inspired you, if it challenged you, send it to a man in your life. Send this to a brother. Listen, this is Perspective. I'm your host, Tyrell. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.
From the north, so it's only right I get on these beats and I skate. I'm about mines, yeah, mind my business. I'm just trying to be great. MITCH.